Yeah, Brian, Donald Trump just negotiated with himself because he is the head of the Department of Justice. He is the all-powerful Article 2 Emperor of the United States. Remember, he's the one who said Article 2 says I can do anything I want, and he is now proving that, or at least testing its limits. He's just granted himself and his family members and his businesses complete and absolute immunity against ever being audited. And I'm going to read a little clip from this new addition or addendum to the settlement agreement that Donald Trump approved for himself yesterday. They've just tacked on another provision. So, with all of this, Brian, I'm beginning to feel like Donald Trump may be corrupt. I'm not entirely...
I don't know what it is. There's just something creeping in that might give that indication.
I have a sneaking suspicion he's not on the up and up. When I read this, Brian, I swear, I lost my mind for a minute, and I thought, it would be so easy to just quit, just disengage, just give up because of the tsunami of crime and corruption that washes over us every day. And then, I thought back to Richard Nixon and Watergate. And you know what? When Nixon and his corrupt administration officials and his criminal associates were kind of in the midst of committing those Watergate-related crimes, I'll bet they were feeling themselves. I bet they felt bulletproof, like there was nobody who was going to touch them. And then what happened? 48 of them were convicted of crimes. 30 of them went to prison. Brian, that is going to look like small potatoes when we deal with the accountability that must come to Trump and his criminal associates, both in and out of government. So, I just decided to double down and let this continue to energize me and work toward that accountability mission. But let me just read for our viewers a little bit of this new agreement that Donald Trump just struck with himself, against the American people and the American taxpayers. And it basically says that the United States of America is hereby forever barred and precluded from prosecuting or pursuing any and all claims or causes of action, whether presently known or unknown to the United States of America, that could have been asserted against Trump and against his family members and his businesses. He gets a complete pass for any and all matters currently pending, tax returns filed before today. In other words, this is not quite cradle to the grave immunity for all tax crimes he may have committed, but sort of cradle to today in the 80 years that Donald Trump has been on this planet. And that is basically what this one-page addition gives Donald Trump. He has given himself and his family and his businesses complete insulation against ever having a tax audit being performed on them for anything they have ever done from the time they were born until today, the effective date of this agreement. Now, as outrageous as that sounds, if there is any silver lining here, Brian, I was taught in law school a very long time ago that judges can and should strike down any agreement that is reached that is, and here are the magic words, void as against public policy. And I don't want to turn this into a law school class, but let me just read a little snippet of what the law provides about an agreement like the one I just read. The legal doctrine of void as against public policy dictates that courts will refuse to enforce agreements or legal provisions that undermine the public welfare, violate established law, or subvert the administration of justice. That's just a little flavor of the legal doctrine of void as against public policy. I have to believe any jurist, any judge worth his or her salt would throw this thing out, would invalidate this if a legal challenge were brought against it so quick it would make Trump's head spin. So, these battles are not over. These battles are just beginning. And the way I see it, Donald Trump must know that he's going to lose Congress in a landslide in the midterms. And now he is trying to grab all of the sort of criminal gains he can collect up for himself, recognizing that...
Bunch of questions here, but the first is not necessarily about this deal in particular, but does the president have any authority or power to have a deal negotiated and for it to stand even after he's out of power? So what I mean is, like, for example, on this Board of Peace, this International Board of Peace, he handed down this edict that he was chairman for life. He's only the president right now, and so after he's no longer president, what weight does his authority carry, or does his word carry as a private citizen to continue serving on the Board of Peace, or to continue having this corrupt deal struck where the IRS can't audit any of his finances?
Well, Brian, rather than give you an answer and then give you all the caveats to that answer, I'm going to give you the caveat up front. The caveat is nobody has any fucking idea, because the courts, the United States judicial system, has never run up against an abjectly, openly, notoriously criminal president who is trying to make himself king for all times and all purposes in perpetuity, forever and ever. Amen. So there is no court precedent you can point to say, well, last time the courts had to deal with this, here is the way they ruled, and that has now set precedent. But I think now the answer, given the caveat, is nobody flipping knows. The answer is, I don't think the courts will say a president, once he has attained that status, right, can do whatever he wants for all time in perpetuity. He can grant himself powers beyond the time he serves as president of the United States. He can grant his family members all sorts of immunity against tax audits. He can protect and shield his businesses, and they can have been run as criminal organizations for as long as he wants, and the federal government can never touch them because Donald Trump said while he was president, the federal government can never touch them. I just don't think there is any lawful precedent. There's certainly no statute on the books that would provide for that. There is no precedent in courts of appeals that would provide for that. So I think the best answer is no, he doesn't have that power. But, unless and until the Supreme Court says, duh, he doesn't have that power, we are always at risk. Given that we have a compromised majority on the Supreme Court, we are always at risk that they will create out of whole cloth, and contrary to the express terms of the Constitution, additional presidential powers, that we didn't know existed, like presidential immunity. That doesn't exist either in our history, it doesn't exist in any precedent, it doesn't exist as a federal statute, but a majority of the Supreme Court justices decided to conjure it up out of whole cloth. So, all of these questions are unanswerable.